Hello and welcome back, dear students. Today we'll move on the next topic, that is renewable resources. Last class we have discussed about non-renewable resources and distributions of minerals. But today we'll be discussing on renewable resources. First of all, let us know what is this renewable resources. These are the type of resources which can be renewed again after it is used. It can be renewed with the help of mechanical or electrical processes. Like this type of resources would be tidal power, electricity, that is the dams, and solar power, wind power, nuclear power, geothermal power, tidal power, and biofuels. These are the type of renewable resources because these are renewed again every day and every hour. So coming to the first, that is the hydropower system or hydropower electricity. In hydroelectric power, electric is produced from generators that are driven by water and turbines. These power plants are usually located in dams that restrict or control the flow of rivers. Falling water enters the turbine and the moving blades power the generator to produce electricity. With the help of these turbines, it is converted into electricity, and it is used to generate electric power, and hence lastly it generates electric power. The major sources of electric energy are fossil fuels and nuclear fuels. Hydroelectric or hydel power accounts for 24% of world's electricity, and in some countries like Norway and the Democratic Republic of Congo accounts for 99% of country's electricity. That means in these countries 99% of energy is being generated from this hydroelectricity, while in Brazil it accounts for 91%. And Canada is the world's largest producer in hydropower, followed by US, and the other hydropower producing countries include Russia, Brazil, China, and Norway. And this hydropower has an advantage of being a renewable energy resource that is also a non-polluting environment generating resources. That means this does not affect the environment, and hence this is also an eco-friendly. As you can see in the slide there, it shows how electricity is generated in dams. Coming to the next is the solar power. In solar power, sunlight is the main source of energy. Solar energy can be directly converted into electricity by solar cells, that is photovoltaic device. Of course, a single cell can produce only 2 watts, but many wall connected can produce thousands of kilowatts of electric power. However, this involves large investments and hence not a very popular producing option. And because this solar power is not much cheap, this solar power is very expensive. So we do not find much about of this, or since this solar power is not that cheap, that means this solar power is expensive, so we are not much familiar, or we are not much popular with this solar energy. And this solar energy is mostly used for low power items such as watches, calculators, cookers, water pumps, lanterns, and water heaters. You have to know that it is used for only low power items. Though solar energy is free, the high cost of collection, conversion, and storage restrict to its use. India receives a lot of sunlight, so there's a huge potential of solar power. As we all know, our country India receives a huge sunlight energy, and hence our country is possible to develop this solar power. Presently, the solar power is replacing the 5 million diesel pumps in India. A solar power project has been proposed for a Thar desert. In the desert area, a solar power project has been proposed, since the desert area is very hot and receives much sunlight. And next we have wind power. By wind power, we simply mean that the energy we get from the wind through windmills, that is the wind power. And this has been used since ancient times. Wind power has been used to grind grains and pump water. It has become important now due to the shortage of fossil fuels. The high cost of petroleum, and also because of the pollution caused by the fossil fuels, wind is a renewable energy and is also free. The use of wind for electricity generation has been increasingly rapidly, and is estimated that wind power would eventually replace all fossil fuels and nuclear fuels. In Denmark, 20% of electricity is generated from wind source, and the other leading countries like Germany, Spain, US, India, Italy, and Netherlands. And these are some of the countries that generate that also generate wind that also generate electricity from the wind. In India, wind power accounts for about 8% of the total installed power capacity of the country. It ranks fifth in the world wind producing capacity. Wind accounts for 1.6% of the total country's electricity production or consumption. Tamil Nadu has the largest number of windmills, followed by Gujarat. And these windmills are mostly found in the coastal areas in the country. And next we have this nuclear power. Nuclear technology used as a fuel. And next we have nuclear power. Nuclear technology used as a fuel called uranium, a relative common material. Energy is released from this uranium, that is the elements which have a radioactive elements, which is a radioactive element. Energy is released from uranium when an atom is split by a neutron. When it is split, the energy is released, and from the energy, electricity is generated. The uranium is split into two, and as this happens, energy is released in the form of radiation and heat. This nuclear reaction is known as fission procession. Atomic fission is also known as atomic fission. When this uranium is split into two and this happens, energy is released in the form of radiation and heat, and thereby we generate energy after releasing this radiation and heat. The particular source of energy production has numerous advantages and disadvantages. The use of this nuclear power has some good points and even some bad points. In the advantage, in the good points, we have the amount of energy, electricity produced in a nuclear power station is equal to that produced by a fossil fuel. The energy that produced by fossil fuels like petroleum, coal is equal to the amount of energy produced by nuclear power plant. They do not burn fossil fuels to produce electricity, and hence they do not produce damaging polluting gases. In this nuclear power, since it's not a burning fuels, it does not release in this nuclear power plant, since it does not burn, it does not release polluting gases like that of the other fossil fuels. And it is also believed in this type of power, is clean and environmental friendly, since it does not release polluting or damaging gases. It is also and eco-friendly. And coming to the next, we have a disadvantage point. There's the bad points, the bad side of this nuclear power plant. Nuclear power is a controversial method of producing electricity. Many people and environmental organizations are very concerned about radioactive fuel it needs. That is point number one. It states that since radiations are released, and point number two, radioactive waste remains radioactive dangerous for thousands of years and is currently stored in places such as deep caves and mines, which is both costly and extremely dangerous. And then in the second point, we have this waste remains radioactive for thousands of years and is currently stored in places such as deep caves and mines. The waste of these radioactive elements is still dangerous and is stored in deep places. And number three, many people living near the nuclear power stations or waste storage depots are concerned about nuclear accidents and radioactive leaks, which are damaging to health both in short and long time spans. And thirdly, people are concerned. People living near nuclear power plants are afraid because in case of nuclear accidents and radioactive leaks, they will affect their health, and this can cause birth defects and cancer. This is why people are very much concerned about these nuclear power plants. So those are the points of advantages and disadvantages. And the next, there are more than 440 nuclear power plants across the world that accounts for about 17% of world's electricity in 30 countries. In France, 70% of electricity is generated by nuclear power, while Lithuania has about 80%, and the other leading producers will be Slovakia, Belgium, and Sweden. And in India, this uranium, the main element, is mined in Jharkhand, and the nuclear power plants are located in Tarapur, that is in Maharashtra, Kalapakam, Tamil Nadu, Rawat Bhatha, that is in Rajasthan, Narora, Uttar Pradesh, Kakrapar, Gujarat, and Kaiga, Karnataka. These are the list of the place where nuclear power plants are found in India. And on the next, we have geothermal power. By geothermal power, we means the energy obtained using the heat from the Earth's surface, Earth's interior, is known as geothermal because hot springs, geysers, and volcanics are tapped to generate electricity. Ancient Romans used hot springs to heat their baths at home. Even today, which use is found in Iceland, Turkey, and Japan. Hot water and steam reservoirs under the surface of the earth hot water and steam reservoirs under the surface of the earth at temperatures of more than 180 degrees Celsius are generally used by existing geothermal power plants. These leading users of this power are China, US, Iceland, Turkey, New Zealand, Georgia, Russia, and Japan. Nearly 19% of Iceland electricity is generated from these geothermal sources. India has many small hot springs that can be used effectively to tap geothermal power. Presently, Manikaran in Manikaran in Himachal Pradesh, Kembe, Gujarat, Bakreswar Tanloi in West Bengal and Bihar, Godavari Valley in Andhra Pradesh, and Baren Island, that is Andaman and Nicobar Island. These are the list of the places that have geothermal stations. And coming to the next, we have tidal power. And this tidal power is the energy generated from the tides of the water. This energy is tapped to create tidal power and other renewable resources. There are several ways that this energy can be harnessed. High and low tides are utilized by building a dam to block the water at low tide and then releasing the water through a turbine that generates electricity during high tides. Ocean currents are also used to drive underwater turbines to generate electricity along coasts and islands. As you can see in the slide, there you will witness how electricity is generated from the tides. High and low tides are utilized by building a dam to block the water at low tide and then releasing the water through a turbine that generates electricity during high tides. And also, as yet, there are very few places that generate sustainable power. Presently, there are only two commercial scale power sites in the world: La Rance Estuary in France and Bay of Fundy in Canada. India's first tidal project is coming up at India's first tidal power plant is coming up at Durgandi Creek in Sundarbans area in West Bengal. There is a lot of potential with three excellent potential sites: Gulf of Cambay and Gulf of Kutch in the west, and Ganga Delta in the eastern coast. And lastly, there is the biofuels. When we say biofuels, it is a type of fuel that is derived from biomass, a plant material or animal waste is known as biofuels. It is produced by the breakdown of organic matter in the absence of oxygen, and this biogas is clean and easily controlled source of renewable energy like solar and wind energy from organic waste materials. It can be produced from regionally available raw materials and recycled waste and is environmental friendly. And biodegradable waste like manure, sea waste, municipal waste, green waste, plant material, and crops are being used for producing the biogas. The gas is also useful as a fuel to substitute for firewood. The gas is useful as a fuel substitute for firewood, dung, agricultural residues, petrol, diesel, and electricity, depending on the nature of the tax and local supply conditions. And coming to the next, that is the types of biofuels. Number one, we have ethanol is pure alcohol or ethyl alcohol and is probably the most common alternative biofuel used in motor vehicles today. And biodiesel. Biodiesel is becoming more popular and it mimics the traditional petroleum-based diesel. And in this biodiesel that is generally made from soybean, palm oil, sunflower, canola, groundnut, rapeseed, and sometimes recycled cooking oil. And lastly, that is biobutanol. In biobutanol, we have methane, methanol. These are the other biofuels used to be. And lastly, for assignments, write down the advantages and disadvantages of a nuclear power plant. Number two, mention the types of biofuel. Number three, name the world's largest producing hydropower energy. And lastly, what do you understand by geothermal energy? Try to do your assignment on time and try to pay attention on your study. Thank you and see you next time.